So in my previous videos and from what I've been seeing online, some of the biggest rejections with AI coding frameworks and BMAD in particular is two things. One, that it chews through a lot of tokens and that it's a waste. And number two is that a lot of people are saying you can't pivot or adjust if you choose to change things mid-project. And so what I'm going to do in this video is provide solid evidence to counteract both of those arguments, because I've been using BMAD for months now, and I've been in AI coding for the last 8 months, almost 7 days a week, and I have good reasons to counteract both of those common rejections. So that's what this video is going to be about. And not only that, but I'm also going to jump through and actually show you how this change course action works and how you can actually pivot midway through a project, and why the context and the token usage in BMAD is actually a better spend of tokens than if you were to go and do that in some other AI coding workflow. But before I jump into that, my name is Adam. I started as a freelancer on Upwork. I taught myself how to code over 5 years, and I did over 60 projects through the platform, rose up into the top 1% expert vetted program, and did over $100,000 publicly there before I went on to create an AI development studio called APG Software, which builds AI-powered internal CRMs for businesses to replace their SaaS bloat. Not only that, but I'm also obviously very passionate about AI, and I teach AI on my YouTube channel and in my AI Builders Hub, as well as freelancing skills and how you can actually make money with these tools. But with all that out the way, let's jump into the video and take a look at the change course action in BMAD and how it works. So if we take a look at what we're actually doing in here, what I'm going to do in a moment is show you how the change course workflow works. But the actual body of work that we're working on is basically connecting an accounting software, a very common accounting software called Xero, similar to QuickBooks. If you're from the States, there's a good chance you probably heard from QuickBooks. But essentially the whole purpose of this is that you can sync your transactions, sync your invoices, sync your clients and contacts, basically sync your information with an accounting tool so that that handles a lot of the complexities around taxation and payroll and all that kind of stuff. It really depends which country you're in on the laws and regulations around that kind of stuff. Pretty much the only thing that we don't automate or we don't replace with this custom software that we're building, because of all the complexities around taxation, and there's actually some certain APIs and endpoints in Australia that make that very, very difficult. There's a lot of red tape around it. But what you'll see here, so I use a widescreen monitor. What you'll see, I have like a 3-step workflow. So on the left, I used Claude Code and I look through the files. I open the browser to run the local host in Cursor. And I do that doing Command-Shift-B, which opens the browser. And then on the right here, I will often use Cursor. I actually use a composer model because of how quick it is, typically for like user interface changes. Because it's rapid, it's also free currently, but that ends tonight, I believe. But I was just kind of testing it. So if I want to use a separate model, I can use this Cursor chat on the right here. I just use the Pro plan for Cursor, $20 a month. I don't use it too much. Then I use the $100 a month plan for Claude, which means that I almost never hit my limits with Claude Code when I use it there. Now, what we're going to be talking about is BMAD and how the whole change proposal system works. Now, I'm still working in V4. They have a V6, which is in alpha, which will probably change this to a degree. But a lot of people will say that BMAD eats a lot of tokens, which, look, it does generate a lot of documentation. But in my view, that documentation is essential, and there's no shortcut to properly documenting your app and explaining how things work. When I go through a change proposal workflow, you're going to see why that is the case. So currently, I'm going to walk through some of the change proposals that we actually built. So this is Epic 16. And what Epic 16 is, so if I come over to Epic 16 in the docs, where are you? Oh, where's the docs folder? Here. So scroll down here. So if we go to Epic 16, which is the Xero integration. Now, if we right click, you can open it in Markdown. So let's not right click. And we go open preview, which looks to be Command-Shift-V. We can see here that the purpose is to integrate Xero as the single source of truth. And basically what it's doing, if we come down to the stories, basically modify database fields. So we can see here, and now this is looking at our so if we go up to our docs and we look at our architecture, we can see our coding standards, we can see our database schema. So you can see here, we've got our database schema in here. We've got all of these documentation files that a lot of people will see as like a waste of tokens generating, when they don't realize that that kind of context is essential to generate accurate output, especially for complex integrations like an accounting software where there's all sorts of edge case scenarios that we have to account for. And we really need to understand what's happening here. Because we need to make sure that we're, if the account connection breaks and we resync, it doesn't add duplicate records to zero. There's all sorts of different edge cases that you need to take into consideration. And if you're just using a tool like Lovable or something like that, and you're just prompting it to create a connection to zero, chances are you're not going to have accounted for all of those edge cases, which the devil's in the details with coding. The bulk of the work is actually in those edge cases. Syncing to zero one time is not that difficult. So you'll see here we've got 8 stories, auth setup, webhook setup, and signature validation, which we've actually, so we submitted a change request. So if I come back into the change logs, I'm going to quickly just go through the stories, but you'll see this is no longer applicable because what happened was the AI hallucinated and thought that there was a webhook supporting transaction posting when there wasn't. So I had to do a change proposal for that. Transaction sync services, client contact sync, invoice syncing, expense syncing, bank account mapping, payment syncing, and then unified zero sync orchestrator, basically. Touching on those in a bit more detail, the actual complexity of how we're setting this up is not too important. The purpose of this is to show you how the change proposal system works. So you could access the change proposal through 2 of the BMAD core agents. Now, if I come up to BMAD core and I go to agents, now when you go to the GitHub docs, I've got other videos showing you how to do this and intros to BMAD and explaining how that all works. You can watch those videos right here. But if you haven't, if you've already checked those out, if you haven't checked them out, go check them out. If you have, you'll understand what I'm talking about here in terms of how to install BMAD into your project and what the agents actually are. So here's the product owner. So in here, if I open the product owner preview, so in here we'll go, these are the instructions, but you'll see here that correct course. So this has the correct course task. So the product owner has it, but the project manager also has it. So I'm going to try it's a Command-Shift-V. Cool. So you'll see here tasks, correct course. So they both have the correct course task. The project manager is slightly more high level in terms of in terms of the instructions and also what context is going to be injected into it. So if it's a major structural correction, I would use the project manager. If it's a bit more of like within an epic, I'd probably use the product owner to do the change request. But let me show you exactly how it works. So if I come across to start a new agent, so let's just do the project manager for now. It's going to capture the project manager for us. Okay, so we can see it's activated as John, the product manager from the BMAD folder agents. And we've got the steps here. So we've got the correct course step. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, the BMAD structure is really rigid. And if I want to change something halfway through an epic or a project, which often happens because it's very difficult to understand exactly how your project is going to work from the very start, you'll get halfway through and be like, actually, I want to add this feature, or this feature should be different, or this API is actually different to what we first anticipated. We need to change the code a little bit. And the correct course is actually really, really effective. So you'll see what happens is I'll activate option number 2, which is correct course, and it's going to go through the steps. So it's going to read the markdown file. Now, if we open this file, this is the task documentation, and this is how it works. So here, it's giving it like a step-by-step instructions on how to actually execute this. So initial setup and mode selection. So it's going to ask us whether we want to do it incrementally or in YOLO mode. So here it goes, what's the change trigger? What project artifacts do we have access to? What's your preferred interaction mode? Then it's going to go through and execute a checklist analysis. So it's going to work through steps 1 to 4 and basically take a lot of information from you on like, what is the change? Why are we making this change? And then it will go through and actually analyze all your documentation and start to see what this is going to change in what you've already done. So if you've already done some work and you're changing something, it will go back, read what you've done, and build a plan to adjust your project going forward. And then what it will do is it'll basically create a change proposal. So what I'll do is I'll show you the output of this step. If I come down to the docs and I go to change proposals, we can look here. So one thing I had done is I forgot that in Xero, we need to be syncing our clients because invoices are linked to clients. Now, that's just something that I overlooked before I started Epic 16. And so I got into story 16.3 or 16.4, and I was like, hold on, we can't do this because the invoice sync requires clients. So what it's done here is it's built this. Now I'm going to punch your fee. So what it's done here is essentially I went through these steps here, and it actually basically proposed a new solution, which was to add a story into 16.4 before the invoice creation, which was setting up the client contact sync first. And look like this documentation is incredible. So what it's doing here is it's essentially documenting everything. It's figuring out what the core issue was, what made me realize about it, why this project, like, does it block progress? Does it not? In this case, it does. So it's identified that. It's come through, and this is all through like a chat process. It's come through. It's helped me identify, what the issue is and how we are going to solve it. Then it's gone through and it's figured out what is it blocking. It hasn't impacted the authentication, the webhooks, or the transaction sync. But it does impact 16.4, where there's a blocker there. So there's a new story required. And then so as you can see, like this is extremely well written documentation, much better. Like to do this just vibe coding without a structure like BMAD that's going to go through, methodically ask you the right questions and build detailed, accurate documentation like this is borderline impossible. Because look how much context we have here. This is super accurate. It's built an exact plan on how we're going to adjust all the so it's built out a draft of what story 16.4a is going to look like, how that's going to work. And this documentation is insane. And so if you use a less rigid framework, a lot of this responsibility is on you. And so setting up a complex API integration like Xero is going to be very difficult. And we've got Xero synced and connected with authentication into this platform using the BMAD framework. And we're working through all of the edge cases. We're working through, like you'll see in here. So I'm not sure if we can find some of the edge case stuff in here. Change proposal document. Let's take a look. Risk assessment, success criteria. So maybe let's take a look at, here's another one. Let's take a look at the actual story 16.4. Wherever that is, PRD, Epic Stories 16.4. Cool, so this is the invoice sync service. 16.4a we've actually implemented. So this is the client sync service. So as you can see, it's actually marked out what we've done. So there's an X in that taskboard there. So it's marked in. This documentation is incredible as well. If we want to go back and figure out what we've done, interpreting code is one thing, but interpreting clear human language like this on what has been implemented, what files have changed. Like if you come down here and you look at the change log, so where is it? So we can see the created files and the modified files. Then also see completion notes and completed summary and the change log. This documentation is invaluable going forward. And a lot of people are going, oh, the BMAD burns all these tokens. I mean, yes, it's doing more work, which is going to cause more tokens, but that's not, I don't see that as burning tokens. It's using tokens in a strategic way to build a proper project, which is going to save you tokens later down the line because it's going to hallucinate less and it's going to understand the project better and it's going to be more accurate. So long term, this is the only feasible approach to building complex applications with relatively, with quite feasible accuracy. We're building complex apps here with multiple tabs, 5 different user roles, multi-tenant. To store all that context and remember all of that across a massive project like this, honestly, at this point in time, I think is only feasible with a detailed framework like BMAD, which goes the extra distance in terms of documenting everything nice and clearly. And so we'll see here a lot of test information. Cool, so it's a proper error logging. So error handling, these are the common Xero errors: unauthorized, email address required, duplicate contact, etc. These are the actions, what will happen. Let's take a look. So sync flow, duplicate detection strategy. So I was going through and also asking these questions. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to gracefully handle edge cases. What if Xero goes down and we get an error there? What if we've disconnected from Xero and then reconnected and we're resyncing? We don't want to create duplicate client records in Xero. All those kind of edge cases, we're building solid documentation, and this will persist across different chats. So I can go ahead and create a new dev agent or create a new conversation and not have to, this is way too complex to explain in one simple lovable chat or to pertain across different conversations. You need a complex, well-structured framework like BMAD to build piece by piece. Like we're on Epic 16 now. We're constantly going through, adding more and more and more to this project, and it is shaping up really, really nicely. You can see just by looking at it that, we've got like the user interface looks incredible. This is a proper, well-built, clean-looking application that was built using AI code in combination with some human knowledge, and really trying to find the middle ground with, understanding how this technology works, but using AI to dramatically speed up how quickly we can build these, especially these interfaces and these workflows and stuff like that. So I hope you found this video informative on how the BMAD framework works and how AI coding frameworks can adapt to changes in a process as you go through the application. If you want to check out a much more detailed course of me actually starting this project, building it from scratch, going through the BMAD framework from start to close to where this is at now, I've got that full video on my channel. I've also got a video of like intro to BMAD, how it actually works, a bit more softer on going over the GitHub repository, all those kind of things. So if you find that helpful, feel free to check out my channel. Feel free to come across the AI Builders Hub, where we talk about all things freelancing and AI development. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.